Marcus Wellington adjusted his silk tie for the third time that morning, staring at his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office. At 38, he commanded a tech empire worth billions, yet something gnawed at him constantly. The gleaming cityscape below seemed to mock his inner turmoil. His company, Wellington Dynamics, occupied 3 floors of the most prestigious building in downtown Chicago. Employees whispered about his ruthless business tactics and cold demeanor. Marcus had earned his reputation through years of calculated decisions and an unwavering focus on profit margins. He trusted no one completely. The morning started like any other until Marcus noticed something unusual. His personal assistant mentioned that Elena Rodriguez, his housekeeper for the past 2 years, had been asking subtle questions about his schedule. Elena worked at his penthouse apartment, maintaining the pristine environment he demanded. She was quiet, efficient, and seemingly invisible, exactly how Marcus preferred his domestic staff. Elena had immigrated from Honduras 5 years earlier, working multiple jobs to support her younger sister's medical school education. She possessed a quiet dignity that Marcus had noticed but never acknowledged. Her dark eyes held intelligence that seemed wasted on menial tasks, though she never complained or showed any sign of dissatisfaction. During lunch, Marcus received an unexpected call from his head of security. Someone had been accessing his home office computer during his absence. The security footage showed Elena entering the room, but the camera angles couldn't capture exactly what she was doing. Marcus felt a mixture of betrayal and curiosity wash over him. That evening, Marcus returned to his penthouse earlier than usual. Elena was in the kitchen, preparing his dinner with the same methodical precision she brought to every task. Her movements were graceful and economical, never wasting motion or time. She wore her standard uniform, a simple black dress with white trim that somehow looked elegant on her petite frame. Marcus watched her from the doorway, studying her behavior for any signs of guilt or nervousness. Elena hummed softly while she worked, a melody he didn't recognize but found oddly soothing. She seemed completely absorbed in her tasks, unaware of his presence. The next morning brought more disturbing news. Marcus's business rival, Jonathan Hayes, had somehow obtained confidential information about Wellington Dynamics' upcoming merger. The leak could cost Marcus millions and potentially destroy years of careful planning. His paranoia reached new heights as he considered who might have access to such sensitive information. Marcus decided to test Elena's loyalty through a carefully orchestrated plan. He would pretend to be asleep in his study while she cleaned, observing her actions through half-closed eyes. The study contained several important documents deliberately left in conspicuous locations, along with his laptop positioned to appear accidentally accessible. Elena arrived at her usual time, moving through the apartment with quiet efficiency. Marcus positioned himself on the leather couch in his study, arranging himself to appear naturally asleep. His breathing became deep and regular, though his heart raced with anticipation. Through barely opened eyelids, he watched Elena enter the room. She moved with her characteristic care, dusting shelves and organizing papers without making a sound. Marcus noted how she handled his belongings with respect, never appearing to examine anything too closely. Her movements suggested someone accustomed to working around sleeping employers. As Elena approached his desk, Marcus tensed internally while maintaining his sleeping facade. She began cleaning the surface around his laptop, her movements precise and professional. The important documents lay just inches from her reach, yet she seemed to deliberately avoid looking at them directly. Elena's behavior puzzled Marcus. Instead of the suspicious activity he expected, she demonstrated remarkable professionalism. She even carefully moved his laptop to clean beneath it before replacing it in exactly the same position. Her attention to detail impressed him despite his suspicions. While cleaning a nearby bookshelf, Elena accidentally knocked over a small picture frame. The sound wasn't loud, but in the quiet apartment, it seemed amplified. She immediately looked toward Marcus to see if the noise had disturbed him. Her face showed genuine concern rather than the guilt he expected to see. Marcus forced himself to remain motionless, maintaining his sleeping performance. Elena quietly picked up the frame and examined it for damage before placing it back perfectly. The photograph showed Marcus with his late father at a company celebration years earlier. Elena studied the image for a moment, and Marcus thought he detected something like sadness in her expression. The morning continued with Elena working around him with increasing care. She seemed determined not to wake him, adjusting her routine to accommodate his apparent rest. Marcus began to feel foolish about his suspicions as he watched her demonstrate nothing but professional courtesy and genuine consideration. When Elena finished cleaning the study, she did something unexpected. She noticed that Marcus appeared cold and quietly retrieved a blanket from the hall closet. With extraordinary gentleness, she covered him without making contact or disturbing his position. The gesture was so naturally caring that Marcus felt a strange warmth he couldn't immediately identify. Elena left the study as quietly as she had entered, closing the door with barely a whisper of sound. Marcus remained still for several more minutes, processing what he had witnessed. His elaborate test had revealed nothing suspicious about Elena's behavior, only a level of thoughtfulness he rarely encountered in his daily life. As Marcus finally awakened from his performance, he felt more confused than when he had started. Elena's actions contradicted everything he believed about people's motivations. She had shown no interest in his confidential documents despite having perfect opportunity to examine them. Instead, she had demonstrated a level of care that seemed genuine rather than calculated. The afternoon brought another revelation when Marcus reviewed the complete security footage from previous days. What he discovered challenged his assumptions about Elena even further. The footage showed her entering his office not to access his computer, but to water a small plant he had forgotten about. She had been caring for the dying ficus tree during her own time, never mentioning it or expecting recognition. Marcus sat in his office that evening, staring at the city lights while reconsidering everything he thought he knew about his housekeeper. Elena Rodriguez was proving to be far more complex than he had imagined. His carefully constructed world of suspicion and calculated relationships suddenly seemed inadequate for understanding the quiet woman who had covered him with a blanket. The revelation left Marcus questioning not only Elena's motives, but his own assumptions about human nature. In a life filled with people who wanted something from him, Elena appeared to expect nothing beyond fair payment for honest work. The concept was so foreign to his experience that he struggled to accept it as genuine. As the city hummed with activity below, Marcus made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He would continue observing Elena, but not from suspicion. Instead, he found himself genuinely curious about the person behind the professional facade. For the first time in years, Marcus Wellington was more interested in understanding someone than in protecting himself from them. The following week, Marcus found himself paying closer attention to Elena's daily routines, but his motivation had shifted completely. Where once he looked for signs of deception, he now noticed details that revealed her character. Elena arrived each morning at exactly 7:30, carrying a worn leather bag that had seen better days, but was meticulously maintained. Marcus discovered that Elena had been quietly fixing small problems around his apartment without reporting them or requesting additional payment. A loose handle on a cabinet drawer, a squeaky hinge on a closet door, a lamp that flickered occasionally, all had been repaired during her regular cleaning hours. She carried basic tools in her bag and possessed skills that went far beyond typical housekeeping duties. One morning, Marcus received a phone call that changed his perspective entirely. Dr. Sarah Chun from Chicago General Hospital was calling about Elena Rodriguez. Marcus's blood ran cold, fearing the worst. However, Dr. Chun was calling to thank Elena for her volunteer work in the hospital's children's ward. Elena spent her Sundays reading to sick children, and her gentle presence had become a source of comfort for many families. Marcus learned that Elena had specifically requested not to be contacted at work about her volunteer activities. She valued her privacy and didn't want her personal charitable work to affect her employment. The revelation that she spent her only day off helping others left Marcus feeling humbled and slightly ashamed of his earlier suspicions. Later that day, Marcus encountered Elena in the building's mailroom. She was sending money to someone in Honduras through a wire transfer service. The amount was substantial relative to her salary, and Marcus realized she was supporting family members back home. Elena noticed his presence and quickly finished her transaction, appearing embarrassed to have been discovered. Marcus began observing Elena's interactions with others in the building. The doorman always smiled when she arrived, and the maintenance staff clearly respected her. She knew their names and asked about their families with genuine interest. Elena had quietly built relationships throughout the building while Marcus remained isolated in his penthouse fortress. The security leak at Wellington Dynamics was eventually traced to a disgruntled former employee who had retained access to certain systems. The discovery completely exonerated Elena and left Marcus feeling foolish about his suspicions. He realized he had been so consumed by paranoia that he had suspected an innocent woman of betraying his trust simply because she happened to be present. Marcus decided to test himself rather than Elena. He began leaving small amounts of money in obvious places to see if she would take anything. Each day, the money remained untouched and precisely where he had left it. Elena's integrity proved unshakable despite her obvious financial struggles. During a particularly stressful week when Marcus was working 18-hour days, Elena began leaving small gestures of care. Fresh coffee appeared at his desk without being requested. His favorite sandwich materialized during late-night work sessions. These acts of thoughtfulness were performed without fanfare or expectation of recognition. Marcus started researching Elena's background more thoroughly, but not for security purposes. He learned that she had earned a degree in literature from the University of Honduras before immigrating to the United States. Her immigration had been motivated by her sister's acceptance to medical school in Chicago, and Elena had sacrificed her own career prospects to provide financial support. The revelation that Elena was highly educated explained many things Marcus had noticed but not understood. Her careful handling of his books, her respectful treatment of his art collection, her ability to repair complex household items, all reflected an intelligence and education that her current position didn't utilize. Marcus found himself wanting to engage Elena in conversation beyond the basic instructions and pleasantries they typically exchanged. However, years of maintaining professional distance made such interactions feel awkward and forced. He struggled to find appropriate ways to acknowledge the person behind the professional role. One evening, Marcus discovered Elena crying quietly in the kitchen while she prepared his dinner. She wiped her tears quickly when she noticed his presence, but her distress was obvious. Marcus